Get your hands off of Syria. Don't believe all the media hysteria. They say the whole country is against Assad. What about every single pro-government march? What about the character of the opposition? What kind of government do they really envision? It's like Libya 2.0 if you ask me. The CIA is now just sitting and laughing. They take popular discontent and spin it. Want to see the Arab Revolution diminished. What about Palestine support from Damascus? Will that still remain if the country is captured? Clear that the Zionists support the rebels. They want to see the Baptist state just leveled. Who really benefits is the question to ask. We should know much better from the most recent...
Yeah, we'd like to welcome Johnny Achi from Arab America to Syria. It's been about 3 weeks, Brother Johnny. So much has happened in the Middle East. Can you give us an update on what's going on, Brother Johnny?
How you doing, Dedon? Thanks for having me again on the show. The last 3 weeks, I think we were on the show. We talked about, United States leading a new coalition made up of the reactionary regimes of the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, the same countries who now, by the admission of Joe Biden, by the way, and you remember we talked about that, he actually said that it's embarrassing. It was an embarrassment to the administration to admit that these people are in the coalition, and Joe Biden said, well, these are the Sunni countries who have promoted the proxy Sunni-Shia war in Syria and poured maybe billions of dollars, most to the hands of Nusrah Front and ISIS and Al-Qaeda extremist elements, jihadists in Syria, to fight the Syrian government to topple President Bashar Assad. So yes, we got finally a point on admission by Joe Biden 3 weeks ago, but he followed it a few days later with an apology to all these states because, of course, that's, politics. But I think we finally got to a point where we realized that every element who are fighting on the Syrian land that is not with the Syrian government or with the army are jihadist terrorists. So we confirmed after 3 years that there is no moderate rebel. Now, the whole world has admitted this except one part, which is still the U.S. administration. Still the U.S. administration just voted to send more weapons to what they call moderate rebels. I want to remind the listeners that every time the United States government has sent money or weapons, these weapons ended up in the hand of the extremists. So the man-packed shoulder-fired ground-to-air missiles have landed. The BGM-71 anti-tank missiles were visible in Kasab. And so the idea is either you're giving them to people who are selling them to them, or you're giving them directly to them, knowing or unknowingly. You got to stop sending weapons to Syria. The war is costing the United States $8 million a day. So we are waging a war against ISIS. I don't know how really a war is it. To me, it feels more like a public relations campaign because, and about what? We've done about 6 weeks or 7 weeks of bombing at $8 million. We've already spent about $650 million, close to $1 billion in another month. And what have we achieved? Maybe killed 30 or 40 or 50, I don't know, maybe 200 jihadists. And we have about 150,000 of them in Syria. So what's a better way to stop? Isn't it easier to stop the flux or the flooding of jihadists into the border from Turkey? Turkey is still not committed. Turkey still, their goal, and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, their goal is to oust President Bashar Assad. Now, unfortunately, it is the same goal the United States have. They want to oust President Bashar Assad at all costs. And that's what we need to continue to, aware the public. We've said it from 3 years ago. These movements are not pro-democracy movements. People used to laugh at us, Dedon. I believe you. They used to tell me, here comes Johnny's conspiracy theory of Islamic Caliphate. Well, the Islamic Caliphate that we talked about from 3 years ago, that these people coming from mosques and they're calling for Islamic Caliphate, is no longer a laughable matter because they have established their Islamic Caliphate. So we were right all along, and the whole world has admitted that this is really what they're after. They're not after just ousting Bashar Assad. They're after, making a Sharia law where everybody is ruled by Islam. And I wish it was the moderate Islam, ruled by the backward, definition of Islam. So now that we have agreed, everybody realizes what the danger is. The United States still insisting on arming moderate rebels. I challenge anyone in the U.S. administration to show me one moderate rebel in Syria. Every group, from Free Syrian Army to Suqour al-Sham to Ahrar al-Sham to Nusrah Front to ISIS to the Army of Islam, they all have the same ideology. They're just different names. And they all are fighting Arabs. They're fighting the Christians and the minorities and also the Sunnis who are moderate. In other words, one more point. We talked about the civil war in Syria. They insisted on calling it a civil war. A civil war when everybody's fighting everybody. Dedon, 99% of the Syrian population are living in peace and harmony together. Not even 1%. 1% would be like 250,000. We don't have a 250,000 rebels, Syrian rebels. We do have 250,000 foreigner mercenaries are coming into Syria. But Syrians are not killing each other. The Christians are not killing the Muslims. The Sunnis are not killing the Shia. The Shiites are not killing the Alawites. Nobody is killing anybody. That you have those terrorist groups who are being funded by the West and by, the reactionary regime in the Middle East, who are fighting all Syrians. Evidence were there from the first week. You can go back and you get magazines like Der Spiegel made interview back in early 2012 with someone who's getting, treatment in Lebanon. He was free to speak. He talked about, he had called burial brigade within the Free Syrian Army, within the Farouk brigade. Their job is to execute. He talked about 300, 350 in one summer of 2012. Meaning, when he was asked, were they all Christians and Alawites? He goes, no, more than half were Sunnis. What's their crime? Collaborators. In other words, anyone who works for the government of Syria is a collaborator. Well, the Syrian government is the biggest employer in Syria. Half the people work for the Syrian government. They want us to stay home. They would not allow to open shops. If you do, you are executed. These things were happening way before ISIS began. So this ideology is there from day one. We've tried to shed light on it, but we were always told that we were lying, that these people are pro-democracy. All they wanted was a theocracy. A theocracy is the absolute opposite of democracy. They wanted a religious autocracy where no one is free to do what they want. And that's what they are getting now. So finally, at least our voices is heard. The reality shows what we have on the ground. And we need just to stop funding, stop sending weapons to anybody in Syria. If we want to end war, you don't send weapons. I don't care what you call. Every weapon is a lethal weapon. There is no, we're sending non-lethal weapons to moderate rebels. Both sentences are wrong. They don't exist in Syria. There is no non-lethal weapon, and there is no moderate rebels. So if we can continue to do this, if we can continue to let Americans know that they need to contact their congressmen, they need to talk to Adam Schiff and McCain and all these people. McCain is so proud that he knows the moderate rebels. If you see pictures of McCain up in northern Syria, all these were the leaders of ISIS today. So he should be ashamed of himself of taking pictures with these people, because they were all the leaders of ISIS and Nusrah. They are killing Syrians across and Iraqis across the borders. So, this is where we are today, Dedon. The Syrian army, luckily, is the only one who's truly fighting terrorism, headed by the Syrian President Bashar Assad. The recent election in Syria on June 3rd proved to the world that the Syrians know who is standing by them. We are standing by the President Bashar Assad, no matter what, because he's the only man who had the courage to fight these people. He could have run away, and left. Instead, he's fighting. The Syrian army is fighting a tremendous fight, and they're the only one who winning the ground war. They're winning the ground war and if the United States and the other governments truly want to defeat ISIS, they should put hand with the Syrian government and the Syrian army, not give more weapons to other groups to fight themselves.
Johnny, in terms of the political economy of the situation in the Middle East, obviously United States munition manufacturers and military-industrial complex are making super profits by arming not just the so-called opposition or the so-called opposition forces, but also by arming, if there's any difference at all, via Saudi Arabia and particularly Turkey, the so-called Nusrah, ISIS, and so forth, okay? So it appears the United States is kind of funding both sides within that so-called internal conflict, trying to get the secularists, so-called secularists that's trying to overthrow the socialist government of Bashar al-Assad to fight ISIS and Nusrah. So either way, American multinational corporations, the munitions industries are making super profits. Do you agree with that analysis?
Excellent point, Dedon. I couldn't agree more with you. Believe me, the United States always has to find a hot spot somewhere around the world. Their number one business is manufacturing weapons. And just like you manufacture cars, you cannot bring in the 2015 models until you get rid of the 2014. You can't leave them in warehouses where they're going to rot. You've got to continue to find all the weapons that in the Middle East people fighting each other with are 99% American-made weapons. All the weapons that the Nusrah has, I'm not saying that States went and gave it to Nusrah directly, but either they got it from some other groups that the United States is selling it to them. Saudi Arabia and Qatar, we know, have spent billions, and that's by their own admission of Joe Biden. Tens of thousands of weapons came into those extremists. So the United States doesn't want them to go to extremists, but they want them to go to, less hardline. The idea is the United States is selling. Instead of saying we're going to stop the flood of weapons, they say we're going to let the Armenians arm themselves. You know, the Yazidis, they wouldn't have died, they wouldn't have been butchered in Sanjar just before they went to, other areas if they had weapons. We need to arm the Kurds more. No, you should stop arming all sides and stop and cut off weapons to all sides, and that's when you have end of this misery. The United States, unfortunately, not interested in human rights, not even interested in human lives, in the saving of human lives. All they want to do is corporate profit, and nothing more than selling weapons is going to make profit.
Okay, Brother Johnny, thank you very much. We've been listening to Johnny Achi from Arab American Syria. We've been covering the Syrian crisis for the last, 3.5 years? And because of the work of Arab American Syria, a lot of Syrian youth as well as progressive forces like the International Action Center, Answer Coalition, some of the Pan-African and other groups, we've been able to stop the United States from directly bombing in Syria, but of course they're using surrogates. We're now going to move into our tribute to the Freeman brothers. Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you, Dedon.